Hey everyone, it's Richard Payne here from Keller Realty and the RPM Real Estate team, your team for everything to do with buying, selling or investing here in the Halifax and surrounding area market. Was out with clients today in what is pretty atrocious weather here, but at least it's rain and not snow, and we were discussing what they wanted to do with the actual property, and not necessarily the property itself but the land surrounding. And we got into this discussion, and one of the things that we were talking about was like, well, what does that mean as part of a restrictive covenant? And it kind of got me thinking, in the fact that I get asked this quite a few times when we're out with buyers, where they're like, well, can we do this? Can we do that? You know, what's the restrictions on the land? Not necessarily what can we do with the house, but what can we do with the land? And they had a pretty specific need in what they were looking for in terms of parking for some commercial vehicles. And that's what the restrictive covenants are there for. They will explain about the whole piece of land and the subdivision that you're buying in, what has been put in place to kind of not control the subdivision, but certainly, you know, what is sensibly to be allowed and what's not. Because, you know, maybe not everybody wants to have the garage mechanic who's servicing 18-wheelers on his front driveway, or some monstrous garage that gets built right next to your property line. So that's what the restrictive covenants are all about. Is they're not there to police the neighborhood, and sometimes it's very difficult for those enforcements, for the restrictive covenants to be enforced, because the person who put them in place, which is usually the developer of the land, maybe they're not around. Maybe you can't get hold of them. Maybe you can't ask them, is it okay if I build this single detached garage and this is how it's going to look? But it can be things like, you know, just as simple as putting up a fence. You know, there can be covenants that say this is the style of fence that is allowable to be put and erected around the property, and this is what's not. So that's the point of restricted covenants. Always on title, so they're attached to the title deed. So there shouldn't be any excuse for not having restrictive covenants in a certain area. But read them, understand them, because there's nothing worse than you thinking you're buying a house, you're going to do this, you can do it, you get the planning permission, you put it up, and then somebody comes along and says, well, actually, like restrictive covenants, you're kind of contravening. So that's today's tip. Restrictive covenants, that's what they're all about. That's what they're there for. Any other questions, you know how to get hold of me. Richard at rpmrealestate.ca, 902-489-1804. Ask me any questions, we'll give you the answers.